Welcome to the American Otaku Show. This is one of our Halloween episodes about vampires in anime. Vampires in general are in a lot of different cultures, not just anime. You have vampires in major media books like your Twilight with the sparkly skin and so forth. You have vampires such as Dracula, which they base the character off of Vlad Tepes from the Romanian area. There's also stories of vampires in ancient Greece, as well as Romans and various other things. There was a popular series when I was growing up called Buffy the Vampire Slayer about this cheerleader who hunts vampires. But this subject is about vampires in anime. The first anime I'm going to talk to you about that has vampires in it is none other than Vampire Hunter D. This is a vampire I usually cosplayed as for a while back when my first conventions. He's a character from an 80s anime called Vampire Hunter D. He's a hunter of mystical creatures such as vampires, werewolves, mutants, and the like, who was hired by this girl who's a farmer. And these creatures kept on trying to go into her crops and stuff, but she ends up hiring Vampire Hunter because, D, because she wants to get rid of a vampire who's making advances to her and trying to make her become a vampire and make her become one of her used for servants and things to create more kids and various other aspects because she was a attractive lady and the main vampire who run this land was Vampire Snyder or Lee in the House of Lee. He has several other vampires that are under him, as well as mutants and so forth. So D goes takes the gold that was given to him to hunt these vampires, even though there's starting being feelings between D and the major lady in this anime. They go he goes hunting for these vampires and fighting various different creatures along the way. While there's also a lamp that paralyzes vampires, and D being half vampire himself, he ends up paralyzed for a bit, and the mutant tries to take off his head, but ends up taking off his hand or some aspects, and his hand comes back and reattaches to him. He has a parasite on his hand, which opens up as a mouth that could suck in things and dispel magic as well. The hand talks to him and eventually brings him back to life and helps him get up and get revenge on there. He ends up into a final conference with the vampire Lee and ends up leading into a very epic one knocking the other down, one knocking there and trying to use his skills to destroy V, thinking V is inferior to him. But then it was revealed what D actually is and his lineage, that he in fact is a lot more powerful than the vampire Lee is. I could go on. This leads into the second movie of Vampire Hunter D called Vampire Hunter D Bloodlines, which there was a area of a vampire fell in love with this other lady who also loves him, and they go in there. So the town folks hired D to get rid of the vampire, as well as get rid of the people who are trying to entice this lady, as the vampire is trying to take the lady to his area in the carriage. You have various characters that are some of them are mutants that join D. There's this one lady who has various different abilities. There's one guy who could turn himself into an energy form that shoots lasers and stuff. A lot of them get slaughtered amongst the mutants that are on their way, as well as other creatures. But eventually, the lady and he finds out that the vampire lady and the vampire and the lady actually had a thing together, and they go to this countess who's a vampire who they think was helping them, but only wants to absorb and destroy, and use the vampire as a catalyst to what she really wants. This vamp anime is very old but very good. It goes into various of details as what is society like in back in the future, which is more like ended up more like Middle Ages, while several technologies and various other dark themes. This anime is very gothic, very energetic. And considering the latest one came out in the 90s, the manga I hear is really good, even though I haven't really read it. The artwork in this anime is a masterpiece. I highly recommend to seeing that one. The second anime I'm going to talk about is Hellsing. Hellsing is an anime starring Alucard, Sir Lady Integra, as well as a cop lady named Sarah's Victoria, who was already on a mission to find out these what darking's going on there. These people are disappearing, and this vampire priest ends up taking care of them. And eventually, Alucard goes to her, "Do you want to live or do you want to die? If you decide to live, you'll have to become a vampire and you become my assistant, so to speak, or thrall." She decides to live, so he brings her to life but shoots her right through the chest and kills the vampire thing. She ends up living and slowly comes to the grips of being a vampire herself. She doesn't really want to drink human blood because she wants to stay in the idea of humanity. But her not drinking it, she does becomes weaker and more more craving and losing more control. Alucard ends up being the vampire who hunts other vampires along with Ceres, with Sir Integra, who is the leader of a group called Hellsing. Their job is to fight the darker underbelly of vampires in there. This leads into eventually vampire Nazis who try to take over all of England, and led by a vampire whose the whole idea of is just war. Everything leads to war, war, war. Doesn't care if he wins, doesn't care if he loses, long as there's war and death in his wake. He doesn't care what the outcome is. This anime is very, very dark, very good. A lot of reds, a lot of blacks. Alucard has the ability to turn himself into beasts, as well as split up into various eyes. Very creepy anime. Eventually, you find the inner workings, such as the butler. Yeah, it's always the butler. Did it uses strings to attack his vamp people, and eventually, him and Alucard ended up in a conflict, going against each other and fighting. There, you also have people from the Catholic Church come in there who tries to fight D with a bunch of blades, as well not D, but Alucard with a bunch of blades, as well as Sarah Intragras with a bunch of blades as well. And eventually, this leads to more and more greater and stronger conflicts there, especially when the vampire Nazis come in there. I highly recommend this anime to anyone who really, really likes vampires and who really likes the dark themes. The next anime I'm going to talk about is Seraph of the End. Seraph of the End talks about a post apocalyptic future where vampires are taking over all of the land and area, using human as cattle, so to speak, using them for blood. The main character, Shihiro Mizuyuka, is the main character who was started off as a kid into a vampire cattle thing. His friend ended up saving him but sacrificed himself while he was bleeding. There was what Cruel Timpish, who's the leader of the vampires. They used Timpish because of Vlad Timpish of the vampire lore in Dracula and so forth. She ends up feeding him there and turning him into a vampire. One of the character, his friends, into a vampire himself. Eventually, this leads to the conflict of this guy trying to end all vampires and the vampires who are trying to take over humanity, and ends up being into the friends conflicting each other. The main character ends up getting a blade that is what they call a demon blade, what has a demon inside there to they use to attack things. This goes into a lot of Japanese mythology where they believe that their katanas and their blades have spirits in them that gives them really more power, more strength, and more fighting thing. While the this leads into various other conflicts and fighting various different other vampires and various other creatures in this. This vampire started off in the idea of where this took place, which was in after Christmas is when the world apparently ended, and this idea of civilization recome and a new civilization come and taking over. This is plus a post-apocalyptic anime as well as a vampire anime. This anime is really good. This anime takes a lot of good action shots. I won't spoil too much more for there. This I will lead into my fourth anime that I'm going to talk about is Vampire Trinity Blood. Vampire Trinity Blood stars this guy called Abel Nightroad, who is a Catholic priest who goes in there various different churches and really nightly duties, and eventually leads into vampires trying to take over the flying ship. By the way, this takes place in the future. They ended up fighting. He fights there and reveals he's what we call a cruisenik. A cruisenik is a vampire that feeds off on other vampires. Eventually, he defeats there and he asks for, oh, is that sandwich still open? And he's always hungry for food. And he goes various different other areas, meets fighting other vampires like the vampire ruler of this country who does not like the Catholic Church because they think that Catholic Church failed his wife, as well as the Catholic Church itself failed to protect his kind and always hunting his kind. This being in the far future, there's like weapons hidden in there. He comes out with this huge weapon that, well, he was going to use to design to eliminate humans as well as eliminate the Catholic Church itself. But of course, Abel Nightroad convinced him otherwise, as well as the idea that his wife truly wanted, who was also a scientist, that he didn't want him to eliminate everything. He wants him to live for the better of the good. This leads on to the other anime I'm going to talk about, and this is the last anime I'm going to talk about before we do a manga review with Mr. Pat is a more happy anime called Rosario Vampire. This anime has a lot of fan service, meaning a lot of panty shots, a lot of boob cleavage shots and various other things. This is more of a harem anime with Skune, who's a regular human who goes to a high school that is all monsters with succubus, witches, vampires, werewolves, and the like. He ends up almost and always into conflict with these various different creatures, as well as end up saving a life. That's where Rose where the main Mocha ends up being a helping him out, transforming him into her true form. When she takes off her crucifix, she becomes full vampire. She ends up beating them up and kicking them. Some of them became more friends. Some of his harem really likes Mocha as well. They're all trying to get with this regular guy, standard harem anime. They're all, and while this guy is basically just your average guy, nice guy who helps out the only ways can go humans, they have scenes where they go to the beach, a lot of bikini shots, various other things. This anime goes into the aspects of being human in an unworld war in a world of mystical beasts, as well as the idea of feeling like a fish out of water, the algorithm of high school, that we don't feel like we just get along, where people look on only into our differences. This goes to the first season climax where he he is confronted by a demon who wants to eliminate all humans and use human as cattle and various other things, that humans are worthless. This leads into the aspect of what is truly human, and what we really feel in high school is that we never really truly fit in. Maybe you're the popular, maybe you're the least popular, and what have you, and just trying to figure out these mass emotions. This turned up to 11 being a human in a world of supernatural beings. This anime is very great when it comes to how different aspects of who we truly are and where we truly lead off to there. This anime is more than just a harem anime, it's an algorithm of growing up. And we'll leave this up to, this is Manga Talk to Mr. Pat. Thank you.
October and Halloween. We're doing the most well-known monsters of Halloween, and that's vampires. Um, the one I chose was Vampire Hunter Knight. Um, this one is a shoujo manga, and I know what you're thinking. It's a girl manga, but it's a lot more than just uh, low-level romance and stuff. So what we'll be covering is these three characters. The first one is Yuki, which she herself, Yuki Cross, was saved from vampires by a vampire. Um, Next, his name is Zero Kirio. He is a hunter family, vampire hunter family that got brutally murdered by vampires. So you imagine he has a big, huge axe to grind. And then we have named Kaname Karan. He's a vampire elder. So those three have a complication of going on there. Like Yuki herself was actually saved from Kaname, and that itself was she's scared of vampires, but she's not full on hatred of vampires. Where Zero is just utterly hates them. So the story also takes place in which is called Cross Academy, between day and night cycle. So Yuki and Zero themselves are acting as guardians against the day and night class. The day class is all humans, and they're protecting the border between day and night class, and the night class is actually all vampires. So when they're making a transition, they intervene to stop the interaction between vampires and humans. The other unique part of this story is that there's a whole political intrigue between Kaname and his clan, and always keeping the vampires in line. But then there are some vampires their thirst is way over the top, and they'll end up trying to kill some humans. So he kind of keeps them in play, but there's also Zero himself is a hunter, so occasionally he'll actually execute the vampires himself. The cool part about the vampires in Kaname's group is they actually have different abilities that kind of help with they themselves will stop wild vampires from preying on humans. So there's a whole war between humans and vampires. It's just smoldering, and it slowly escalates. I give this manga 4 out of 5. I really like the multifaceted of the stories going on with this. And
Welcome to the show where anime dreams come alive. Let's go! All American Otaku vivified, diving deep into the anime tide. From the screen to the page, we're turning every stage. All American Otaku, their worlds collide. From the 90s till now, the passion's been real. Anime manga, it's how we feel. Conventions and scenes, cooking up dreams. Japanese culture bursting at the seams. On the 90s till now, the passion's been real. Anime and manga, it's how we feel. Conventions and scenes, cooking up dreams. Japanese culture bursting at the seams. every genre, let's take that ride. From action to drama, it's all here. Community strong,